most valuable company. Imagine holding a company in your hands that was worth more than the entire stock markets of many countries. A company that started in a suburban garage with almost no money. A company that was just 90 days away from bankruptcy. A company whose own founder was fired. Yet today, it is worth trillions of dollars and has become the most valuable company in the world. This is not just the story of Apple. It's a story about vision, failure, obsession, innovation, and one of the greatest business comebacks in history. How did Apple transform from a struggling computer company into the world's most valuable business? Why do hundreds of millions of people willingly pay premium prices for products that often have cheaper alternatives? And what lessons can every entrepreneur, investor, and business owner learn from Apple's incredible journey? Let's find out. The story begins in 1976. Steve Jobs was just 21 years old. Steve Wozniak was a brilliant engineer. Together inside Jobs' parents' garage in California, they founded Apple Computer. At that time, personal computers barely existed. Most computers filled entire rooms and were only used by governments or large corporations. Jobs believed something different. He imagined a future where every person would own a computer. That idea sounded ridiculous. But Wozniak had already built a machine that made it possible. Their first product, the Apple One, sold only a few hundred units. It wasn't revolutionary, but it proved people wanted personal computers. Then came the Apple II. This changed everything. Color graphics, easy setup, consumer-friendly design. Within a few years, Apple became one of America's fastest-growing companies. Revenue exploded. In 1980, Apple went public. The IPO instantly created hundreds of millionaires. Steve Jobs was only 25 years old. Apple looked unstoppable. But success often creates its own problems. Apple believed the Macintosh would dominate the future. Launched in 1984 with one of the greatest commercials ever created, directed by Ridley Scott, the Macintosh introduced the graphical user interface to the masses. It looked futuristic. It felt magical. But it had serious problems. It was expensive. It had little software. Performance disappointed many users. Sales slowed dramatically. Meanwhile, Microsoft licensed Windows to almost every PC manufacturer. IBM-compatible computers flooded the market. Apple stayed closed. Microsoft stayed open. The difference became enormous. Inside Apple, conflicts grew. Steve Jobs constantly clashed with CEO John Sculley. The board had to choose. In 1985, they fired Steve Jobs. Imagine creating your own company and then being forced to leave it. Many believed Apple's future had ended. Ironically, it was only beginning. Without Steve Jobs, Apple lost its direction. Executives launched dozens of confusing products: printers, cameras, game consoles, handheld devices, different versions of Macs. Consumers became confused. Developers became frustrated. Meanwhile, Microsoft dominated the PC industry. By the mid-1990s, Apple was losing hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Some analysts predicted bankruptcy. Some suggested Apple should sell itself. Others believed Microsoft would eventually buy the company. By 1997, Apple had enough cash to survive only a few months. The company stood on the edge of collapse. Then something unexpected happened. Steve Jobs came back. Steve Jobs didn't return with hundreds of ideas. He arrived with one philosophy: focus. Apple canceled nearly 70% of its products. Instead of making dozens of mediocre devices, Apple would build only a handful of exceptional ones. Then Jobs made another shocking decision. He partnered with Microsoft. Yes, the same Microsoft Apple had spent years fighting. Microsoft invested $150 million into Apple. It restored confidence. Next came colorful iMac computers, then Apple stores. Many experts predicted the stores would fail. Instead, they became the most profitable retail stores on Earth. But the biggest revolution hadn't happened yet. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. The music industry changed forever. Then came iTunes. Apple wasn't just selling hardware anymore. It was building an ecosystem. Customers who bought one Apple product often bought another, and another, and another. This ecosystem would become Apple's greatest competitive advantage. Then came January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs walked onto the stage. He announced three products: an iPod, a phone, an internet communicator. Then he smiled. They are not three separate devices. This is one device. The iPhone. The smartphone industry changed overnight. Companies like Nokia and BlackBerry laughed at Apple. Within a few years, many of them disappeared from the top. Google responded with Android. Samsung became Apple's biggest hardware rival. The smartphone wars had begun. Court battles, patent lawsuits, advertising wars, annual product launches. The competition became one of the biggest business rivalries in history. But Apple wasn't only selling phones. It was selling experience, design, privacy, status, trust, and an ecosystem that kept users inside for years. Later came the Apple Watch, AirPods, Apple Silicon chips, Apple Pay, Apple TV Plus, Apple Music. Every product strengthened the entire ecosystem. Today, Apple is no longer simply a technology company. It is one of the world's most powerful brands. Its products generate hundreds of billions of dollars in annual revenue. Its services business continues to grow rapidly. Millions of developers build software for its platforms. Hundreds of millions of people upgrade their Apple devices every few years. Even during economic uncertainty, Apple remains one of the most profitable companies ever created. Its brand loyalty is among the strongest in business history. Rather than competing on price, Apple competes on value, and that strategy has made all the difference. Apple's success wasn't built on creating the cheapest products. It wasn't built on being first. Many of Apple's biggest products weren't the first of their kind. Instead, Apple mastered something much harder: making technology simple, creating products people genuinely love, building an ecosystem that customers don't want to leave. Most importantly, Apple turned failure into fuel. Steve Jobs being fired could have ended the company forever. Instead, it became the beginning of the greatest comeback in business history. Today, Apple's story reminds us that innovation alone isn't enough. Execution matters. Focus matters. Brand matters. Customer experience matters. Sometimes becoming the world's most valuable company isn't about inventing something entirely new. It's about making existing ideas so much better that the entire world chooses your version. If you enjoyed this business story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, which company should we cover next?